Hi there, thank you for joining me to chat about Seeking Sister Wife. If you're a fan of the show, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and also let me know your thoughts on the episode in the comments. So let me segue for just a little second here. Just in case you haven't heard, word on the street is that Jasmine has been with the family, with the Davises, since God knows how long, but apparently there's a photo online that surfaced with her in the picture with April, Jennifer, and Nick, dated back in, I think they said it was February of 2021. So the fact that they're now bringing her on as a new potential wife is all a scheme that they set up to, I guess, have content. At least that's what it looks like to me. So then what is the deal? If she came in before Danielle did, because when I looked last season, aired in July or around there, summer of 2022. And let's say they filmed a year prior. That would bring us to the summer of 2021, which she was already present prior to that. So what's the deal? How come she wasn't in last season? And then now she's here. But then in the picture that was surfaced, Danielle wasn't in that picture. So what is going on? And so did she leave and they asked her to come back to film? Or was it Danielle who left and they asked her to come back to film? Because those two are acting really weird. So who's really present or in good standing with the Davis family and who's not? But anyway, I just thought I'd drop that little piece of hearsay, and we'll just take this episode and for what it is and react to it as we see and not consider all the deception that's going on in real life. So in this episode, we see where the Davises are ending the night. Actually started out with Nick and Danielle in the hot tub where they left off last week. And it was funny because they panned to some wildlife outside. I guess, it's the wee hours of the morning, and it was kind of comical to see them panning to some kind of wildlife outside. But he wanted to make sure that she was okay with everything. And so Danielle was saying, oh, well, we all get along. She's talking about the connection or the dynamic between all the wives. And he was like, no, I just want to make sure you're okay. How are you feeling about this? And she claims that she's, feeling okay. But I don't know. Her mouth is saying one thing, but her features and her demeanor is saying one thing, and I think maybe that's why Nick keeps asking her. Maybe he wants her to actually vocalize that because he's sensing maybe that she's saying something contrary to what she really feels. But anyway, she claims that she was okay with it. He was happy, and then there was a scene with them semi-making out, and I was just like, can we not see that? So anyway, we see later that they're going into the bed, and they're like, oh, they want to make sure there's room for Nick, which is kind of ridiculous because they already said that Nick was sleeping in the middle. The bed is more than huge for, 5 of them? But there's this conversation about making sure everybody fits. Like, okay. So Nick's in the middle next to Danielle and Jasmine, and then Jennifer and April are on the other side, and then we see where he gives everybody a kiss. And we break from that scene. So later on in the episode, they're talking about how everything was fun. Last night was so fun. So we didn't see anything interesting other than the loony conversations with Jasmine. So was there something happening that we didn't see? I'm just curious, like, what was all the fun? But the fact that they were all sleeping together, I don't know if something happened. I feel like that's what Nick wanted, having all these wives. He wanted to have massive orgies or something. So maybe there's something to that effect that maybe had gone down that wasn't filmed. So anyway, later when we see them, it's it's still dark, and there's a lot of snoring. I think it's coming from Nick, and in my head, it reminds me of those Predator and Alien, where the aliens are trying to talk, and it's kind of like a snory, wet kind of sound. That's what came to my head when I heard the snore, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's an alien in the bed. So Jasmine woke up. I guess it was morning time because Danielle was already up, but because their bedroom is below grade, so it's like a split level, so it's kind of darker because it's essentially the basement. But then when she came upstairs, it was daytime. So it was funny to see her. She slid down the length of the bed to get out from under the covers versus going over somebody, which is kind of funny to see her shimmying under the sheets to get out the bed. So anyway, she gets done. She went back upstairs. Danielle was up, so she was making coffee, and then she said, "Oh, they should go outside and talk." So she's asking how she's feeling. She says she's doing good. And I feel like this whole conversation was kind of awkward, and I wonder if maybe the wives set her up to this, to have this conversation, because it didn't seem natural to me. So she's like, "Oh yeah," and she's talking about how jealousy could come into play, and Jasmine was like, "Yeah, I don't feel, I don't feel like that'll be a problem. I don't really care, I'm not like that." And she's talking about how difficult it can be, and Jasmine is just like, to me, her demeanor was like, "Well, sounds like a personal problem to me." And then she goes on to tell her how, things can be hard. It's a lot of work, and how at one point she ended up leaving. And Jasmine was like, "Really?" I think that's the only point that she shows some genuine interest, or some sort of interest, a blip on the radar. And she says in her confessional that she's glad that Danielle felt comfortable to talk to her about that. But I feel like almost as if Danielle is trying to dissuade her from being in the family, because you just met her. Why are you telling her about the difficulties that you're having or have had if you want her to be in the family? So anyway, at the end of the conversation, Danielle was like feeling like, she's withdrawn. She's not really, participating as much as she would like to see in the conversation, and then alluding to the fact that maybe she's not right for the family, which I feel once again that she is trying to find a reason to not have her in the family. Because I feel like if you were dating somebody normally, you would take time to get to know them before you decide whether you're going to marry them or have a relationship with them. All the conversations that we've seen between them have been surface conversations. There's nothing really deep that we have seen that would lead us to, at least that would lead me to believe that she knows enough about her to say that this is not a good fit. I feel like it's just her not wanting to have a wife that's driving her decision to say this. And I wish she would just be honest to begin with and say, "No, I'm not ready to do all this dating stuff." So later on, we see where Nick comes out in his gown, his robe, and say good morning, whatever. And then later we see the other wives come out. They bring out the baby and whatnot. And I think that was the end of that scene with them. Oh, and I forgot to mention that the scene with Danielle and Nick in the hot tub was kind of weird, because Danielle is a curvy lady and Nick is so skinny. And all I saw was like just his head, and Danielle is like completely covering him, which I was just like, wow, that looks weird. Not to say that there's anything wrong with Danielle, but the contrast in their size was just crazy. And then we look at April versus him, and then when he was saying goodbye later on in the episode to Jasmine, they're about the same size, height, but of course, Jasmine is thicker than him, so he's like a little skinny mini in the mix. It's kind of, I just noticed that. It was kind of funny, gave me a little chuckle. But anyway, so then they say goodbye to Jasmine. They all the niceties happen. It's good to spend time with you. Thanks for coming over. Hope to see you again. Blah blah blah. And Nick walked her to the door. So then next we see them, they're having dinner at home. They had some takeout, looks like Italian, and it was just funny. Another thing that I kind of chuckled about was Danielle trying to hold up this little plastic box with this fat breadstick in it, because, Nick had offered to get plates, but they were like, they'll just eat from the takeout container. But then she's trying to prop up this box with the breadstick. I was like, girl, just put it on a plate. Gee. So anyway, I guess this is a conversation after, the debrief, after the sleepover. And so they wanted to know how Danielle felt or whatever. And she says she felt like she likes Jasmine, she's bold, she's fun, she's easy-going. But she feels like maybe she might not be a good fit. She's reserved, and she doesn't feel like she says she wants to have that feeling of being in love with somebody the way she's with them. And so everybody was like looking like, oh damn, here we go again. But funny enough, April says that yeah, she kind of felt like she was kind of reserved. She agrees with Danielle, and she says she doesn't know if it's her being reserved with her or the other way around, but she kind of get what Danielle was saying. April says that well, I guess if she has to be the one who has to be okay with it. They did a vote, and they basically agreed with Danielle that they were not gonna pursue Jasmine to be in the family. Nick is bummed out because I guess he was wanting a piece of Jasmine, but he said he has to go with what the wives decide. It's not a decision for him to make, and he can't veto their decision. And of course, Danielle is the one who has to marry this person, but Danielle agreed that, she said that, their potential wife is out there, so they have to keep looking, which Nick was he kind of perked up when he heard that, so he was kind of happy about that. And so April said she was glad to see that Danielle is, and so did Nick. So he was happy to see that Danielle was speaking up for herself, especially when she's going against the grain. She has the courage to say that, look, although you guys are in agreement, I don't agree. So, and then April got emotional about, Danielle, the growth or whatever, and she was saying something about Nick, and then she started to tear up, and then she never finished what she was saying. So I don't know what that was all about. But they're happy with the little tribe they have going on. They're all happy, and they had a big group hug on the couch. And I believe that was the end of their segment in this episode. We see Justin arriving home from his date with Yari. So this is a continuation of the date night that we saw last week. And so they sat down to talk about how the date went. Justin told Becky that he tried to push her to see if she was really interested, but because they have been going on dates for a couple months now and things are going super slow, he now claims that he's okay with things being slow after what happened previously. But that didn't really appear to be the case when they were on the date. And as a matter of fact, he actually made her feel uncomfortable and feel like she was being pressured into something. So he's saying that he's cool with taking things slowly with Yari in the confessional now, which I find to be weird, because if you really want her to feel comfortable, why would you put that pressure on her? Now she's feeling like something's up, that she's been forced into something that she doesn't really feel comfortable with. And I feel like that is going to affect whatever hope or chances that he would have of her, being with them. So anyway, he tells Becky that the gist of what she was saying was that she wants her man all to herself, like she wants a husband. And Becky was saying, well, there's something definitely wrong she's definitely in the wrong relationship. And she asked him, like, what's the point in to keep going? Does she feel like something's going to change? And that's my point exactly, because if she wants a man all to herself, this is not the right thing for her. And so Justin says that, well, I don't feel like she's scheming to take Justin. I don't know why he was referring to himself in the third person, Justin, away. But essentially, that is what would have to happen in order for her to stay or have a relationship with him, because she doesn't want to share her partner. Becky, of course, says she doesn't feel like anybody can steal him away from her, so that's not going to happen. But if that's her angle, they're all wasting their time, which is true. She says she doesn't feel like they're getting anywhere. They're not going to get anywhere if that's how she feels. Justin is telling her that, Yari likes both of them, both her and him, but she's never heard of this before, so she's taking things really slow. But that's not the reason that she's taking things slow. I feel like she is kind of conflicted in getting into this relationship, or maybe she's looking to be convinced to do it, but she's not really, like, on her own free will ready or willing to get involved. And maybe she's like, okay, I'll go on a date with him, see if maybe he can convince me to do this, but I don't know if I want to do it. So she seems to me to be on the fence, and especially, I guess on the most positive side, on the fence. At worst, she doesn't want to do it because she already said that she wants her man to herself. So then they go on to compare their relationship with Yari compared to their relationship with Stephanie. Earlier, Justin has said that it was like lightning or some kind of something with them, like with chemistry. They got close right away and all that. Becky's saying how she was close to Stephanie. They used to plan things all the time. How she used to talk to Stephanie every day. And now and with Yari, days will go by before she even talked to her. So the relationship is kind of different. So it's giving Natalia. She's more reserved, similar to Natalia. And so, if you're looking for somebody who's going to be talking to you every day, well, that may not be Yari. And that might create a problem if that's the dynamic that you're looking for anyway. So they said they'll continue to look for a sister wife. However, she becomes interested, that's fine, but they'll continue to look for a sister wife. We didn't see a follow-up with Yari as far as how she's feeling now after the date. But I feel like Yari's doing herself a favor if she doesn't get intertwined with these two. So in their segment, we see Garrick having an at-home date night with Miriam. He says he's been excited to spend some time alone with her, aka trying to get into her pants. So he's sitting on the couch, he's away from her, and she asks if he was comfortable, and then he scoots closer. I guess he took that as an invitation. And so he's sitting there, then he tries to put his arm around her shoulders, and I guess he was on her hair, so when she tried to pull her hair out, he moved his arm. But I don't know, I think maybe she was trying to not have him touch her. And then in his confessional, he talks about her body, how she's a full-figure, curvy woman, and she knows how to get all dolled up. And then he goes on to say, well, some women don't know how to do that. I wonder who he was talking about. But anyway, as he's sitting there after he moved his hand from around her arm, then he was holding her hand. At one point, he was rubbing her leg, but I don't think she wanted any of that. So she tells him he tells her how the family seems to like her a lot. And then he's using this soft, culty voice that fades out towards the end of the sentence. And I'm like, what is happening? Speak up. So then she changed positions again. She moved to sit with her feet under her, and she's facing towards him so he couldn't touch her, basically. Like, get your arm away from me. Don't touch my leg. So, she was kind of like trying to be close, but not really be close. And she says she was not comfortable with it being touchy-feely, so it's a bit awkward, and we can tell. He asked her what she wants to do. She says she wants to do something in the beauty industry, and he claims to have had a dream of designing women's clothes so she could be his model. And I was like, the lie detector said that was a line. So she asked how he would feel if she wore a hijab. And he claims that he would want to know where his wife is and try to pull it off. But when she mentioned a hijab, he looked stunned, like he didn't know what it was. I had a feeling that he didn't know what that was. So she said she could take it off in the house. And so he was like, oh, okay, that's fine. And he claimed that he goes on to tell her that how when he was younger, he started a gang where people would have to pay him for protection, and how there's a decal that they have to have on their truck, I guess the people who were having protection, and how it was called Always Thugging Crew with a K. I'm like, what the heck? So she thought it was funny. She was getting the impression that maybe he was just some rich kid, like, needing some excitement, because she was saying how his family's like 6 generations deep in the town. Why would you form a gang? And if you really had a true gang, you're still living in the town. So really it couldn't have been that serious. That's the vibe that I was getting. And that would make sense to me, because you're still living there. How thuggish could your gang could have been? So she wants to know, she says she wants to get to know him more, and she says slow and steady. And she says she wouldn't want to live in that town. And he claims that he would want to change her mind, show her the benefits of living in a small town. But I don't really think that the town exactly is the problem. If I had to guess, I think maybe it's a cultural thing, because, in her culture, families tend to be more communal. So, it could be about the proximity of her family to where she lives. That might be really the main concern here. So he asked her if she would give it a try. She laughed and said if there's a vacation home she could sneak off to. But in the confessional, she said that she didn't feel like he was taking her concerns seriously. And she said she's not comfortable living there because she would be the only, brown or not so brown person living there. And she goes on to say how Garrick has a plan in his head that he wants her to be a part of, aka that he wants what he wants and doesn't care about the other person, what they feel or what they want. So I feel like she's clocking his selfishness and his domineering personality. He says that she's standoffish and is wondering if it's a cultural thing, but I don't think so. I think it's a Garrick thing. Instead of him asking what her concerns were about living in a small town, he immediately attempts to try to get her to conform or do what he wants. So after that, she said goodnight and went upstairs. So the next day we see where they're in the kitchen. They're about to take Miriam to the airport. And him and Danielle, Garrick and Danielle were saying like they felt like it was a good trip. It was a short trip, but it was a good trip. Then Miriam comes in and she wants to feel the baby and said they want to feel the baby cake, and they had some little baby conversations. Danielle says she feels closer to Miriam than she was with Natalia once again. We know this. We've heard it before. Miriam says that asked Garrick if he's ready for her to leave. He says no, and she says not goodbye. She'll be back next month or maybe when the baby's born. Miriam says she doesn't know what the future holds as yet. She hopes that they'll keep talking and building, and maybe at some point they can meet her family. So then when we see her head to the car, the boys are present this time. I mean, we haven't seen them this whole time, not that I recall. And they were carrying her luggage to the car. I'm assuming it was hers. But why? They don't have a commitment from this woman, but they're involving the boys. Like, why? I mean, not to be judgy, but come on now. You can't just bring people in and out of their lives like this, especially you don't have a committed relationship. Why introduce them to her this early in the process? So then Danielle says, if Miriam becomes a part of the family, there will be an issue with Natalia. Garrick says that Natalia won't be able to ignore the process and the progress of another wife being in the family, and she needs to face it head on. Well, I mean, you guys are keeping her in the dark about the home visit with a potential sister wife, so that certainly is not helping. So in the last scene, we're told that it's been 3 weeks since Miriam's visit, and Danielle is getting emotional, saying she's feeling really sad because things are not going well with Natalia. But I'm like, why? You should be happy. That's what you wanted, wasn't it? So we see that there's a photo of Miriam on her desk while she's telling us how Miriam is a good fit for their family, and that Natalia wasn't expecting that to happen. Of course, she's upset. She says she doesn't know if things are going to work out, but saying God is in control and how it's really disheartening. Well, this is your doing. Like, why does God have to solve this problem for you? You guys did this. But she says that, nothing she says can help. Well, can you blame her? So 3 days later, Natalia sends a video message to production, and she says that things had changed a lot since the Merrifields moved back to the U.S. or came back to the U.S. How she discovered many lies, one of which was them inviting Miriam to the house. And she says that since the beginning of her relationship with Garrick, she had told him that she didn't want him adding a new member to the family, unless she was living in the household, which he agreed to. And he promised that she could trust him. He wouldn't do that unless she was in the States, and he did the very opposite thing of what he agreed to. She goes on to say how Garrick was being demanding and how he wanted total submission from her, which she was not having. I was like, what is happening here? It's like he's a wannabe cult leader. Like, I don't know. Is she trying to treat her like a slave or something? Like she has no say, or she can't have any opinions that aren't, shared by him? Like, what a nerve. So she says there's no longer a relationship. She doesn't want one with them. And so we're told that the next day, after the video was submitted, that she officially broke up with them. Well, bravo to Natalia. When a person shows you who they are, then you believe them and you move accordingly. So she moved swiftly to end it with them. So I was happy to see that. So then Danielle and Garrick claims how things escalated quickly, and Garrick was saying how she was demanding that they not talk to Miriam. Well, I mean, considering that she's telling you that she doesn't want you to have anything to do with another person, and you went ahead and did the opposite of that. How are you shocked at the outcome? They're acting like they're so shocked that Natalia has broken up with them and how she was demanding, and they made it seem like she's the reason that this is happening. Come on now. You guys did the exact opposite of what you promised. At least Garrick did. Garrick claims that he's heartbroken, but then Natalia's unwilling to deal with her issues. What issues? The fact that she's standing up for herself? The fact that you're doing something other than what you promised? And how she was not being a team player. See, he says that she was not facing her problems and something about her not wanting to grow up. Really? Funny, because it seemed like she was the most mature of the three of them. So how is she not wanting to grow up? So anyway, Danielle and Garrick are continuing to see Miriam, and Danielle raves about how well they get along, how much fun they're having. Danielle says how Natalia is missing out on a blessing and talks about how good of a husband Garrick is, and then she looks at him, and then there's an awkward silence like, yeah, thanks, but I know it's a lie. Garrick claims that God doesn't make mistakes, even when bad things happen, and then he goes into a sermon, how it's supposed to be a lesson to for the better, or some sermon about how bad things in God help to make things better or whatever. And then the scene ends for them with the birth announcement of their baby. After that, we see updates on each couple, and I'll just add them at the end. So basically, this was the end of the episode. Let me know your thoughts on the episode. Like, comment, and subscribe.